Carl Jung, the renowned Swiss psychiatrist, once said that what we fail to bring into consciousness becomes our destiny, and few things operate as unconsciously as the energy we absorb from the people we allow into our most intimate spaces. But what really happens on a spiritual level when we share our body with someone? How do these encounters influence our emotional balance, our energetic well-being, and even our material life? What many don't realize is that sex doesn't just unite bodies. It merges energetic fields, unconscious memories, and even karmic patterns. And this can either be a powerful catalyst for healing or the silent origin of spiritual exhaustion that touches every area of your life. Because when intimacy is approached with superficiality, the emptiness it leaves behind can go far beyond unmet desire. It becomes an energetic leak, distorting your emotions, your relationships, and even your prosperity. But when it's experienced through real connection, conscious intention, and mutual respect, intimacy transforms into a source of growth, balance, and inner power. So stay with us until the end, because in this video, we're going to explore the two faces of intimacy, the one that nourishes and elevates your energy, and the one that silently drains your essence. If this resonates with you, support us with a like and subscribe for more content on spiritual growth and self-awareness. Now let's step into this fascinating world of energy and intimacy. When two people become intimate, they don't just touch, they absorb one another. Beyond pleasure and chemistry, something deeper happens, something most don't see, but everyone feels on a subtle, profound level. There's an exchange of energy, of stories, of invisible scars that can leave a mark long after the moment has passed. What seems like a simple act of shared desire can become an echo that lingers in the mind, body, and spirit. Some people leave an encounter feeling full, at peace, even renewed. Others feel drained, anxious, or empty, and they don't know why. Have you ever felt like a relationship took more than just your time, as if something inside you was lost? That's not random. Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, that invisible web where our deepest memories are stored, those we don't even remember, but which continue to shape us. Every intimate encounter not only activates your own unconscious, but connects you to the unconscious of the other. It's as if each person carries a suitcase of energy, and in the moment of union, both people end up sharing the load. You don't just receive the other's pleasure, you might also absorb their sadness, their anxiety, their fears. And what's most unsettling is that most people do this without ever realizing it. What's interesting is that this doesn't only affect our emotional state. In many spiritual traditions, sexual energy is considered the most powerful force that exists. Not only does it create life in the physical sense, it also creates in the ethereal. What we generate during intimacy expands into our everyday life, influencing our confidence, our creativity, even our ability to attract opportunities. But what happens when that energy is exchanged unconsciously with people carrying deep wounds, unresolved traumas, or dense emotions? In those cases, intimacy becomes a source of depletion, a silent drain of vitality that can affect everything from your daily motivation to your mental clarity. And this is where many fall into an invisible cycle. They seek intimacy as a way to fill inner voids, to silence the fear of loneliness, or to numb emotional pain. But instead of finding relief, they end up accumulating more energetic weight, repeating the same patterns again and again. Relationships that start intensely and fade into indifference. Connections that promise depth, but leave you feeling like you lost something essential along the way. Inexplicable sensations of sadness, attachment, or guilt after encounters that, in theory, shouldn't have meant anything. Why does this happen? Why can something meant to bring pleasure end up leaving you drained? The answer lies in intention. When intimacy stems from real connection, with respect, presence, and awareness, the energy exchange becomes an act of expansion. In those moments, energy flows in balance, nourishing instead of draining, lifting you up instead of pulling you down. But when it happens from emotional disconnection, from the search for instant gratification without a solid foundation, the exchange becomes a theft of energy disguised as passion. And this doesn't only impact your emotional life. Some people, after a shallow relationship, notice that their projects stall, their motivation drops, and their thoughts grow cloudy. They don't understand why. But something inside them feels different, as if a part of their power got stuck in that moment, as if something invisible is holding them back in a state of stagnation. Have you ever asked yourself how much energy you've left in people who don't even remember your name? How many parts of yourself are trapped in experiences that seemed harmless but actually imprinted your energetic field? How much of what you feel today isn't even yours, but a reflection of energies you've absorbed from others? What you're about to hear might forever change the way you perceive intimacy. Some people believe they can share intimate moments and move on, as if nothing happened, as if the body is just a body and pleasure is a fleeting sensation, something lived and quickly forgotten. But energy doesn't work like that. What we experience in intimacy doesn't disappear when the encounter ends. It lingers inside us in ways we rarely notice right away. And it's not just about memories. It's about vibrations that can affect our peace, our mental clarity, and even how we connect with others. Carl once said that what we deny controls us, and what we accept transforms us. And if there's one thing many people avoid accepting, it's the real impact intimacy can have on their lives. How many times has a fleeting connection left behind strange, hard-to-explain feelings, a sudden attachment, a drop in your mood for no clear reason, an inner restlessness that wasn't there before? That's because the other person's energy has merged with yours. Sometimes this exchange can be subtle and harmonious, but other times it leaves behind a heavy residue, as if you've absorbed some of their fear, their pain, or their unresolved emotional history without even realizing it. It's not just coincidence that some people feel a strange loss of focus after certain encounters, like something inside them is pulling their attention away. Projects that once flowed easily start to stall. Decisions that once seemed simple become confusing. Some even notice their mood shift for no clear reason, like an invisible cloud settles over them. And the issue is, very few people stop to question what's really going on. Most chalk it up to stress, exhaustion, or anything else. Anything but the energy they've allowed into their lives. Because intimacy isn't just an act, it's a channel. When two people come together at that level, their emotions, thoughts, and unconscious baggage all intertwine. And if one of them carries deep wounds, fears, or insecurities, the other may end up bearing part of that load without ever knowing it. It's not magic. It's not superstition. It's simply how energy moves and transfers. The real problem is that we live in a world where the value of intimacy has been reduced to instant gratification, to the thrill of the moment, without considering the consequences. And when the connection is shallow, when there's no real exchange of respect, presence, or intention, intimacy becomes an imbalanced energetic transaction. People try to fill a void, but in the end, all that remains is a sense of depletion. And this is when everything starts to make sense. How many times have you felt inexplicably drained after a connection that in theory should have been pleasurable? How many times have you felt something change inside you after being with someone, but couldn't quite explain what? These aren't coincidences. There's a reason. And understanding that reason can completely transform how you experience intimacy. What follows will show how this exchange can affect not just your emotions, but your prosperity and overall well-being. Most people never stop to think about how intimacy can influence their emotional and material stability. But if the energy we share during those encounters can affect our peace of mind, what's stopping it from influencing other areas of life too? It's not just by chance that after an empty relationship, some people experience confusion, loss of direction, or sudden obstacles. It's like something has been drained from them, something invisible but heavy. And what's even more unsettling is that this kind of drain isn't always immediate. Sometimes it shows up days or even weeks later, when motivation suddenly fades, when everything stops flowing naturally. Jung spoke of archetypes and the collective unconscious, that invisible network of meanings and energies connecting us in ways our rational minds can't fully grasp. Every intimate encounter activates these energetic bonds. They can strengthen us or weaken us, depending on the quality of the connection. Because when intimacy happens with someone who carries deep sorrow, fears, or unresolved resentment, those emotions don't just vanish. They transmit. They seep through the body and soul. And even if we're not fully aware of it, that influence can reflect in how we see the world, in how we make decisions, in the clarity we bring to our lives. But the most alarming part is that when these exchanges happen frequently and without conscious intention, they create an ongoing pattern of energetic depletion. It becomes a cycle in which the person seeks connection, not realizing that instead of being nourished, they're giving away their life force to meaningless bonds. This disconnection from oneself shows up in everyday life, in that lost feeling, in the struggle to attract what we truly desire, in the stagnation that creeps into different areas of life. That's why some people, after multiple meaningless relationships, feel like they've lost a part of themselves. Their confidence is shaken. Their view of relationships changes. Their energy becomes fragmented. And the most ironic part, the emptier they feel inside, the more they seek to fill that void through more encounters, not realizing that the issue isn't the lack of experiences, but the lack of intention behind them. When intimacy is lived with awareness, with real emotional and energetic connection, its impact becomes completely different. It turns into a source of growth, a channel for healing, an exchange where both people are uplifted and nourished. In these cases, intimacy doesn't drain. It actually strengthens well-being, self-esteem, and mental clarity. It's a kind of connection that leaves no sense of loss, only a feeling of wholeness. But how can you tell the difference between an exchange that uplifts and one that drains you? How can you know if the energy you shared with someone is affecting you more than you realize? What comes next might offer answers you've never considered before. To know whether a connection nourished or drained you, you don't need a deep analysis. Your body knows. Your energy knows. You just need to observe how you feel afterward. If after being intimate with someone, you feel peace, well-being, and a deep connection with yourself, then that exchange was balanced. It was a harmonious flow where both energies met, without invasion or exhaustion. But if after being with someone you feel uneasy, empty, or sad without any clear reason, if your mind is clouded with confusion or your body feels heavier than usual, then it's likely something more happened in that exchange. And even if many try to explain it away with shallow reasons, the truth is, energy doesn't lie. Jung once said, "Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's exactly what happens when we repeat certain patterns without asking why. If you've ever felt that no matter who you're with, you always end up feeling the same sense of dissatisfaction, it's because something deeper is at work beneath the surface. It's not just about the people you connect with. It's about the kind of energy you allow into your life and the intention behind how you show up to each experience. The real issue isn't intimacy itself, it's the lack of awareness within it. When intimacy becomes a way to escape, when it's used to avoid loneliness, stress, or emotional wounds, it doesn't solve anything. In fact, its long-term effects are rarely positive. What starts as a distraction ends up becoming a burden. Every hollow encounter leaves a mark, a small crack in your personal energy. And if it's not addressed, it becomes a recurring pattern that's hard to break. This is why many people, after years of casual or unintentional relationships, feel like they've lost the ability to genuinely connect. Their energy has scattered in multiple directions. They've given away fragments of themselves without retrieving them. And little by little, without realizing it, they've weakened their own essence. It's as if they've broken off a piece of themselves in every shallow relationship, as if part of them remained trapped in every fleeting bond. But now comes the most important part. Just as intimacy can drain us, it can also be a powerful path to healing. The key lies in the intention with which it's experienced. When two people come together with mutual respect, authenticity, and presence, the exchange becomes a source of energy, not a leak. In these encounters, intimacy becomes more than just pleasure. It becomes an act of restoration, of strengthening, of expansion. But what happens when someone has already experienced too many unconscious energetic exchanges? Can what's been lost be recovered? Is there a way to cleanse your energy and rebuild yourself after scattering your essence across multiple relationships? The answer might surprise you. When someone has shared too much of their energy without awareness, they start to feel a type of fatigue that's hard to explain. It's not just tiredness or a lack of motivation. It's something deeper. It's the feeling of having given parts of yourself away that you no longer know how to get back, like your essence has been left behind in memories, faces, and seemingly fleeting experiences that actually left a subtle, invisible mark. And this leads to the question, how do you heal something you can't see, but you feel in every corner of your being? For many, the answer lies in silence, in pausing, in stepping out of the automatic cycle of seeking and allowing yourself to turn inward. Not as a form of isolation, but as an opportunity to integrate everything you've given unconsciously. Recovering your energy doesn't mean closing your heart or rejecting intimacy. It means learning to experience it from a different place, from presence, from clear intention, from a connection that adds instead of takes away. When intimacy stops being a reflection of emptiness and becomes an expression of fullness, everything changes. Your energy no longer fragments, it strengthens. Desire is no longer a desperate search. It becomes an expression of genuine connection. And there, in that state of clarity, Intimacy stops being an act that wears you down and becomes a source of expansion. Some people realize this only after years of repeating the same patterns, after asking themselves over and over why they keep feeling the same emptiness, no matter how many experiences they accumulate. Others, however, figure it out sooner and make different choices. The difference between those two paths isn't luck or fate. It's the awareness with which you choose to live each experience. And that's where true power lies. Those who manage to transform their relationship with intimacy start to notice changes that go far beyond emotions. Clarity returns, energy stabilizes, opportunities begin to flow more naturally. Life, in all its aspects, begins to align with a new vibration, one no longer shaped by depletion, but by integration. What's most interesting is that this process doesn't have to be long or complicated. It all starts with a single question. From what place am I sharing my energy? That question changes everything. Because when you start observing the intention behind each encounter, your energy stops flowing randomly and begins to move with purpose. It's no longer about what you want in the moment, but what you're choosing to build with each experience. And in that instant, something within you awakens. You realize that intimacy isn't just an act. It's a reflection of your relationship with yourself. Every person you connect with is, in a way, a mirror, showing you parts of yourself that you may not have seen before. Jung spoke of projection, how what we see in others often reflects what we carry inside. In intimacy, this projection intensifies. We attract not only what we want, but what we need to see, what, in some way, resonates with our energy. And this is where many people find the key to understanding why they keep repeating the same patterns in their relationships. If you've repeatedly found yourself in connections that leave you feeling empty, if you feel like you give more than you receive, if after every encounter confusion weighs heavier than pleasure, it's because something inside you is still seeking answers in the wrong place. When you stop viewing intimacy as a simple physical need and begin to recognize it as an energetic exchange, everything changes. You no longer let yourself be guided by momentary attraction. Instead, you begin to sense what lies beneath it. You feel the other person's vibration, their emotional state, the energy they carry, and most importantly, you learn to choose from a different place, not from lack, but from awareness. This doesn't mean that desire should be repressed, nor that intimacy must be approached with fear. On the contrary, when there is awareness, pleasure is experienced in a far deeper and more fulfilling way. It's no longer about filling emotional voids, but about sharing from a place of wholeness. It's no longer about seeking someone to feel good temporarily, but about building a connection that truly adds meaning to your life. And when that happens, the impact goes far beyond the moment. It reflects in your daily energy, your mental clarity, the way you engage in relationships, and even in the way life flows. If you've ever felt that intimacy left you with more questions than answers, or noticed how certain encounters shifted your energy without any clear reason, it might be time to look beyond what's obvious. There's a reason behind every feeling, every experience, and every bond that has passed through your life. The question is, are you ready to see it? When you finally pause and observe, you realize that nothing has been random. Every person you shared something with left a mark on your energy, and likewise, you left something within them. It doesn't matter if the encounter was brief or lasted a long time, whether it was meaningful or just fleeting. Energetically, nothing is ever truly forgotten. Everything you've experienced intimately still resonates within you in some way, shaping how you perceive love, desire, connection, and, most importantly, yourself. That's why some people, after certain encounters, feel an unexplainable lightness, a sense of well-being that lingers for days, as if something inside them had realigned. And there are also those who unknowingly carry a weight, an emotional fatigue that shows up as apathy, trouble focusing, or a lingering feeling of disconnection from themselves. This isn't random, it's energy in motion. Jung spoke of the shadow, that part of us we don't want to see, but that shows up in our actions, our relationships, and the patterns we unconsciously repeat. Intimacy, when unconscious, can be one of the fastest ways to activate this shadow. Not because the act itself is negative, but because at that deep level of connection, everything unresolved, everything repressed, comes to the surface. And if there's no awareness, no intention, intimacy becomes a channel where wounds are exchanged, amplified, and confused with desire. This is why some people feel strangely attached to someone with whom, in theory, they had nothing in common. It's not the person, it's the entangled energy. It's the echo of what wasn't resolved, what was absorbed unconsciously. And the most puzzling part is that this can influence many areas of your life without you even realizing it. Suddenly, it becomes harder to focus on projects, motivation drops, emotions feel more unstable, as if something is pulling you back, something you can't quite identify, but that's definitely there. Once you begin to understand this, everything changes, because you stop seeing intimacy as a mere act and start recognizing it as a portal of transformation. You realize that every time you share your energy with someone, you're opening a door. The question is, where is that door taking you? Is it lifting you up or draining you, bringing you closer to the person you want to become, or leaving you fragmented, scattered, trapped in cycles that keep repeating themselves? And here's where many people confront an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes, the exhaustion doesn't just come from the other person. It comes from what we carry inside. Because if you're unclear about what you truly want, if intimacy becomes an escape instead of a real encounter, your energy will continue leaking, regardless of who's on the other side. And if that pattern isn't broken, the emptiness never truly goes away. It just changes form. The beautiful thing is, this isn't permanent. Energy can always be renewed, always be realigned. But to do that, you must ask yourself honestly, how much of my energy is still tied to past experiences? How much of my current well-being is affected by what I unconsciously absorbed in the past? And more importantly, how can I reclaim what I once gave away without awareness? That answer could completely transform how you experience intimacy. Reclaiming the energy scattered through past experiences isn't about superficially cutting ties or repressing desire. It's about bringing back to consciousness every part of yourself that got stuck in connections that no longer exist, in emotions that no longer belong to you, in stories that have already run their course. It's not about denying what you've lived, but integrating it, understanding it, and learning to close the energetic portals that, without you noticing, have remained open. This is where most people get it wrong. They believe that by physically distancing themselves from someone, they're free of their energy. But the tie isn't cut with time or distance. It's cut with awareness. There are people who haven't seen each other for years, yet their presence still lingers in certain thoughts, in recurring dreams, in behaviors that seem to loop endlessly. Not because that person still has power over them, but because part of their own energy is still trapped in that exchange. Jung said, "He who looks outside dreams He who looks inside awakens. And when it comes to intimacy, this may be one of the deepest truths there is. Because as long as you keep looking outside for what only exists within, you'll stay caught in the same cycle. It doesn't matter how many times you switch partners or try to start fresh. If your energy is still fragmented, that sense of emptiness will always return. But when you bring awareness into every experience, when you choose to clearly observe what you've been giving and receiving, something inside you shifts. You stop viewing intimacy as a transaction and start experiencing it as an act of creation. You realize that every encounter can either elevate you or scatter your energy, expand you, or get you lost in someone else's. And that's when you finally understand that true connection isn't just about pleasure or desire. It's about the quality of energetic exchange. When you begin to reclaim your energy, the way you relate to others changes completely. You no longer seek to fill voids, but to share from a place of wholeness. You're no longer led by momentary attraction, but choose with clarity who you allow into your energetic field. You no longer give away your power, you strengthen it with every decision. And that's where true transformation happens. Because when intimacy is lived consciously, it ceases to be a source of depletion and becomes a tool for expansion. But this doesn't mean the process is instant. For many, it involves facing emotions they've long avoided, recognizing patterns they've repeated unknowingly, releasing stories that no longer serve them. And though it may feel uncomfortable at first, it's also the most powerful path to freedom. Because when you finally release the energy you've been carrying unconsciously, something incredible happens. You regain your clarity, your strength, your personal power. And in that state, intimacy stops being a risk and becomes what it was always meant to be, a sacred act of connection, expansion, and transformation. Now the question is, how can you tell if you're still carrying energy from past relationships? How do you identify the ties that are still influencing your present, even without your awareness? What follows may offer answers you've never considered before. There are signs, subtle but impossible to ignore. Sometimes it's a recurring thought about someone you no longer have contact with, an echo of their voice in your mind for no clear reason. Other times, it's an emotion that appears out of nowhere, an inexplicable sadness, anxiety with no clear source, a memory that surfaces just when you thought you had moved on. It may show up as resistance to new relationships, an unconscious fear of giving yourself fully again, or, on the contrary, a constant need for validation through intimacy. It doesn't matter how much time has passed. If the energy is still there, it will continue to affect your present. Carl Jung spoke of complexes as autonomous psychic fragments, pieces of our emotional history that remain alive in the psyche, quietly influencing us without our awareness. When a relationship leaves a deep imprint on our energy, that trace doesn't just vanish when the connection ends. It lingers, shaping how we think, feel, and experience intimacy and love. And unless we bring conscious awareness to these ties, they continue to operate in the background, subtly dictating our perceptions and choices. What's even more fascinating is that not all energies we carry come from intense or long-lasting relationships. Sometimes, even brief encounters can leave a mark if the emotional charge of the other person was powerful. Because intimacy is not only about the exchange of words or touch, it's also about absorbing unspoken fears, hidden desires, and buried insecurities. And if there's no conscious intention during that exchange, it's easy to walk away carrying feelings that were never yours to begin with, thoughts that suddenly appear out of nowhere, moods that shift without clear cause. The good news is, reclaiming your energy is entirely possible, but it requires one thing: awareness. The ability to honestly observe what you've been absorbing, what patterns keep repeating in your life, and which stories still influence you without your notice. This isn't about cutting ties superficially or forcing yourself to forget. It's about integration, taking back what belongs to you, releasing what never did, and closing the energetic doors still left open with people no longer part of your path. The first step is recognizing those ties, and to do that, just observe your energy. Do you feel unusually tired, without explanation? Struggling to stay present because your mind keeps drifting back to the past? Do emotions sometimes overwhelm you without a clear origin? These are signs that energy exchanges remain unresolved, that your energy is still scattered across past experiences. And until you acknowledge them, they'll continue to shape how you relate to love, desire, and closeness. But the key isn't just letting go. It's learning to engage with intimacy differently. It's not about avoiding connection or fearing energetic exchange, but about transforming it, choosing with full awareness who you allow into your space, and ensuring that each encounter nourishes rather than drains you. When that happens, intimacy stops being a source of confusion and becomes a tool for growth. It's a shift in perspective, a completely new way to relate to your own energy. And what's most striking is how, when you reach this state, the way you experience love and desire is utterly transformed. So the question becomes, how do you begin reclaiming your energy and closing those invisible ties that have been influencing you unknowingly? The answer might surprise you. Closing these ties isn't something you do on the outside. It's an internal process. It's not about blocking someone on social media or trying hard to forget. Energy isn't cut by distance. It's healed through consciousness. To reclaim what was left behind in past experiences, the first step is to admit that every connection left a trace. And instead of rejecting or ignoring it, integrate it, not as a burden, but as a part of your story that you can now understand from a higher perspective. Jung said, "What you resist persists," and that's exactly where many people get stuck. They try to forget forcefully, cut ties in anger, convince themselves it never meant anything. But the energy remains, because the very act of denial is still giving it power. What truly liberates is not forgetting, but illuminating what was once hidden. Observing honestly how that exchange impacted you, what emotions it triggered, what parts of your own energy became entangled in that connection. When you begin doing this, something within you shifts. You stop feeling like those relationships have power over you, because you no longer see them as a loss, but as a lesson. And at that point, the energy that was once fragmented starts to return. Clarity comes back. Emotional heaviness fades. The unconscious attachment dissolves, not because you forced it, but because nothing within you is still holding that tie. This process isn't always instant, but its effects run deep. Many who do this inner work find that their life begins to flow differently. They feel lighter, more energized, with a new sense of freedom they didn't even realize was missing. Relationships that once seemed impossible to release lose their weight. Repetitive thoughts vanish without effort. Intimacy stops being an exhausting act and becomes a conscious choice. And this is where everything changes. Because once you live intimacy from a place of real presence, You stop repeating the same patterns. You no longer choose from need, but from wholeness. You're not guided just by fleeting attraction. You perceive what lies underneath: the energy, the intention, the quality of the exchange. And when your decisions come from that level, every experience becomes less of a risk and more of an opportunity for expansion. What's most unexpected is how this shift not only transforms your emotional life, but also directly impacts your material stability, mental clarity, and sense of life direction. Because when your energy is no longer fragmented, everything you do carries more force, more intention, more purpose. And in that state, life begins to respond differently. But there's something else, something few ever realize, a final key that could mean the difference between staying stuck in past energy or fully reclaiming your power. Something that, if applied, can accelerate this entire process and completely change how you experience intimacy. And once you discover it, everything starts to make sense. The ultimate key to recovering your energy isn't about distancing from the past. It's about fully inhabiting the present. Letting go isn't enough. You must call back everything you gave unconsciously, everything that remained trapped in moments that no longer belong in your journey. Most people believe that with time, bonds naturally weaken, that whatever was shared with someone simply dissolves. But energy doesn't work that way. What you gave still exists, unless you consciously decide to reclaim it. There's a reason why some people seem drained after many unintentional relationships. It's not the act itself that exhausts them. It's the lack of presence during each encounter. Because when you live intimacy unconsciously, your energy disperses in countless directions without you noticing, not only in memories and emotions, but in fragments of your identity left behind in fleeting moments that still marked you. Jung spoke of individuation as the path to reclaiming the totality of the self, to reintegrate what was scattered and turn it into strength. And in the realm of intimacy, this principle becomes essential. It's not just about closing chapters or walking away from relationships that served their purpose. It's about bringing your energy back, restoring what was fragmented, making yourself whole again. And that can only be achieved through complete awareness of who you are and how you choose to share yourself with others. The first step is simple but powerful. Acknowledge every experience where you felt you gave more than you received. Not with guilt or judgment, but with clarity. Visualize those connections and feel how parts of your energy remained tied to them. Then, with clear intention, call it back. It doesn't matter how much time has passed. Energy always responds to intention. In doing this, you don't just regain your strength. You rewrite the way you experience intimacy moving forward. And once this happens, everything changes. Relationships no longer drain you. They become conscious exchanges. Attraction no longer controls you, because now you sense beyond the surface. Connection becomes deeper, more real, more aligned with who you truly are. And in that state, intimacy stops being a leak of energy. It becomes a tool for expansion and growth. Some people spend their entire lives without discovering this. They keep repeating the same cycles, feeling fragmented, never knowing why. But some wake up. Some choose to take back their power. They choose to share their energy only when they truly want to, with intention, with awareness. And those are the people who experience intimacy at its highest form, as a bridge to a stronger, fuller, more aligned version of themselves. Now that you understand this, there's one more thing you need to know. Because while reclaiming your energy is the first step, there is a deeper level, one that few have explored. A point where intimacy stops being just an exchange and becomes an endless source of personal power. What comes next might redefine everything you thought you knew about energy and relationships, because when you reach that point, you realize intimacy is not just a reflection of your energy, it's also an amplifier of your inner state. If you're in chaos, connection will magnify that chaos. If you're in balance, intimacy becomes an experience that elevates, a sacred exchange that adds instead of takes. What many don't realize is that beyond desire and emotional connection, there's a level where shared energy doesn't just affect your well-being, it shapes your entire reality. Jung spoke of the principle of synchronicity, an invisible connection between our internal states and the events that unfold in our lives. What we feel, what we think, and especially the energy with which we connect to others, directly influences the experiences we attract. When intimacy is experienced from a place of lack, of need, or simply as a form of escape, it's natural for relationships to become repetitive cycles that follow the same patterns of exhaustion. But if intimacy is born from awareness, from aligned energy, then its impact goes far beyond the moment. It affects your creativity, your mental clarity, your ability to attract opportunities, and even your relationship with abundance. Sexual energy is not just a channel for pleasure. It is the same energy with which we create our lives. It's the driving force behind desire. Not just physical desire, but the desire to expand, to manifest, to build. When this energy is wasted in unconscious exchanges, in connections that drain rather than nourish, it's no surprise that other areas of life begin to mirror that same stagnation. But when this force is directed with intention, when it's channeled into relationships that add rather than subtract, it becomes an inexhaustible source of personal power. And this is where many people find the answer to something they've felt for years but couldn't explain. Why does everything seem to flow better after some relationships, while after others, everything feels heavier? Why do some encounters leave a sense of clarity and fulfillment, while others bring confusion and fatigue? It's not a coincidence. It's the energy with which those moments were lived, the quality of the exchange, and the intention behind it. The big question is, how do we learn to direct this energy instead of letting it scatter? How do we turn intimacy into a tool for expansion, rather than a point of leakage? The answer lies in a principle most people have overlooked, a piece of knowledge that could completely redefine how you experience desire, connection, and the energy you share with others. What comes next could change everything. Most people have never considered that intimacy can be a transformative tool. They believe it's merely an impulse, a biological need, something that happens without deeper impact on daily life. But when you start observing the energy behind every encounter, you realize that desire is not something isolated. It's a creative channel. It's the same force that drives us to connect, to build, to manifest. And how we use it determines not just our emotional stability, but also our clarity, vitality, and even our ability to attract what we truly want in life. Jung also spoke of opposites within each person, the anima and the animus, the masculine and feminine energies coexisting inside us. In every intimate exchange, these energies awaken and interact with the other persons, creating a field of vibration that can either amplify or block the natural flow of life. If the connection comes from a conscious place, the energy multiplies, generating an expansive state that touches every area of life. But if the exchange comes from disconnection, what arises is imbalance, a dispersion of energy that affects mental clarity, motivation, and even physical well-being. That's why, after certain encounters, you feel more energetic, more inspired, with a sense of balance you can't quite explain. While after others, even if they were pleasurable in the moment, you're left with inexplicable fatigue, a hollow feeling that doesn't make sense. It's not the act itself that leaves that mark, but the vibration in which it was experienced, the intention, the other person's energy, and the level of presence during the exchange. And here lies the key that few have understood. Sexual energy is not something that is simply released and disappears. It transforms. It stays in the body, in the mind, in the energetic field. And depending on how it's channeled, it can become a source of power or a constant drain on your vitality. When used intentionally, it can be the engine that drives your creativity, your motivation, your ability to attract relationships and opportunities aligned with your true essence. But when it's spent without awareness, without direction, it turns into a weight that slowly drains your energy, affecting your emotional and mental state without you even noticing. This is where many people begin to recognize patterns they had never seen before. They realize that the quality of their energy after each encounter is not a coincidence. They start noticing how certain connections left a lasting sense of fulfillment, while others were the source of a stagnation that manifested in multiple areas of their life. And the most powerful realization is this: once they begin to make changes in how they experience intimacy, everything else starts to align. Clarity returns. Motivation is restored. The connection with oneself strengthens, as if the energy that once scattered in all directions finally returns to its center. The next step is understanding how to channel this energy consciously, how to stop seeing it as merely an impulsive force and start using it as a tool for creation and expansion. And once you discover how to do that, the way you experience desire, connection, and intimacy will change forever. What we share in intimacy doesn't vanish when the moment ends. It stays in our energy, in our emotions, in how we relate to ourselves and to others. Every encounter is an exchange that can elevate or deplete us, nourish us or fragment us, depending on the awareness with which we live it. And now that you understand the profound impact this has on your life, you hold the power to choose. Choose who you share your energy with. Choose from what place you give yourself to each experience. Choose whether intimacy will be a source of exhaustion or a tool for expansion. The key lies in intention, in presence, in the awareness with which you decide to live each connection. Because when you take control over your own energy, everything else begins to fall into place. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying until the end. I hope this insight has given you a new perspective on intimacy and the impact it has on your life. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content on personal growth, energy, and consciousness. See you in the next video.